comprehensive policy package to the State Lands Commission for their consideration, and then eventually that will get to the City Council. You are looking, just from a timing perspective, sometime mid-July of next year before any changes are even made. So we have a long way to go. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but that's kind of the time frame. Okay. This is the part I think all of you are really interested, or I hope you are. We wanted to dedicate as much time to this meeting to hear from all of you. And I know there is a lot of you in this room tonight, so kind of our approach is we are asking everybody to be mindful of everybody else here and limit your speaking time to about 2 minutes. I think we have a timer. Yes, Cynthia has the timer, and she has the buzzer, so please be respectful of the buzzer and your 2 minutes. What we'll do is we'll just ask you to just start lining up, and there's the mic. Want to make sure you talk loud just because we are recording, and we want to make sure that everything you say gets recorded so we can add it to the minutes. If you have a big question, feel free to ask the State Lands Commission or myself questions. We are more than happy to respond. If it is just a general comment, we will take it. If you are like me and you fear public speaking, that's totally okay. We have a second opportunity for you. So we have iPads, that are iPads in the back, where you can, instead of coming up here, you can put your comment on there. You can respond to the survey. So we want to give everybody plenty of opportunity to ask questions, to answer the surveys. And with respect to the survey, just as a reminder, this is an introductory survey, just like this is the starting of a conversation. And we will continue to add surveys as we go through the public engagement process. Okay? So with that being said, and if you can, say your first name just so we remember for the meeting, the minutes. If you want to add an extra touch and tell us, if you're a mooring permittee or a property owner, feel free to. But if not, we will turn it over to you, sir. And maybe Jeff and Matt, if you guys want to just come up here, and I'll hold on to one mic, you hold on to the other. And if there's a question, we will answer or at least acknowledge. So give me a second, let me get situated here. All right, sir, you are up to that.
My name is George Hooker. I'm 90 years old and have had my sailboat on mooring in Newport Harbor for 40 years. I've been a board member of the Newport Mooring Association for 35 years, and frankly, I'd much rather be sailing than telling you that the city of Newport Beach wants to raise our mooring fees 300 to 500% and end mooring permit transferability again. I've spent countless hours of my life addressing these same issues during my 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Now that I'm in my 90s, I'm hoping that the city will muster the requisite integrity needed to fairly manage our public guidelines so mooring permit holders can enjoy their boats rather than be financially burdened by them. The State Lands Commission suggests in its staff report 105 that the transferability of mooring permits may, quote-unquote, violate state law, which to me suggests that it also may not violate state law. I'm wondering why, after 40 years in the harbor, I'm just now hearing about the possible violations. We know that boaters in other parts of California, like those in nearby Catalina, transfer mooring permits. Since state lands has an oversight authority over the management duties of Newport Beach all along, I assumed this matter was sorted out decades ago. Recreational boating is protected by the common law doctrine of the public trust, which protects sovereign lands, including the tidelands of Newport Harbor, for the benefit, use, and enjoyment of the public. Our Coastal Act, Section 30224 states, increased recreational boating use of coastal waters shall be encouraged. And Newport Harbor Beach local coastal program states 332-3 continue to provide shore moorings and offshore moorings as a water in the harbor. The fact is, the mooring permit holders need to comply with city policies and regulations. I've been on committees with Buffy and Riley,
George.
solve these same issue concerns, and we certainly shouldn't be penalized just because current policy makers think that the past policy makers have it wrong.
Thank you, George. George, don't walk away, because you raised an important question, and I'm going to hand this question off, because I think it's an important one to answer. And you brought up transferability and you mentioned there's in the report, it talks about, should, and I think that's a very good question to ask. So I want to see if the State Lands Commission, gentlemen, Jeff or Matt, you want to take a shot at that, responding to that question. I think it's an important one.
Yeah. Hello? Okay, there we go. Thanks, Matt. And yes, thank you for your comments. Our report did use some qualified language because at this time, the commission has basically made the decision to not find a formal violation. Finding that the city was in a formal violation, it would institute or require that there be a formal hearing, and that could lead to potential legal or legislative action, which would basically preclude our ability to work collaboratively with the city to find solutions to the identified issues in a manner that best fits the users of this bay. That's really what we want. We want to be able to address these issues that we've identified in tandem with the city so that they are the best that they can be. We want the bay to still be useful to people. We want people that are using it to be able to use it in a manner that is most ideal within the framework of the Constitution, the Public Trust Doctrine, the granting statutes, and the city's fiduciary duties. And so that's why we use qualified language.
It's an issue with city law. It seems that the state may precedence it. Let's just deal with all the more.
I think that's a great point, George, and actually that's one of the things that's being looked at across the state is how to make sure that across the state there is how other jurisdictions, municipalities handle mooring transfers should be compliant with the state constitution. So that's why, I think it's fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but Newport Beach is first up to that.
The issues that we identified in Newport Beach are not just found in Newport Beach. So we're definitely looking at other locations where there are transfer programs that also raise significant questions and concerns. So yes, Newport is sort of first up here in the way that grantees have not really been reviewed in the past. So yeah, so that's why we use the word may, and the fact that another program exists out there that may operate a transfer program does not mean that transfer programs by themselves are okay.
Well, just one more thing. The word may in your document has been translated into a shall for months in the city's survey, which says that requires it to not be transferred.
Here's what I think the State Lands Commission staff is trying to say, gentlemen. You can correct me if I'm completely off base. What they're indicating is that they use qualifying language because if they use "you are in violation," then that triggers an issue with the state in a more formal review. So by using qualifying language, it allows the city, us as a harbor community, to review our management to make sure that it is in fact compliant. The State Lands Commission report is telling us is that the transfer program in its current design isn't compliant with the state constitution. And so what we need to do is analyze, review, and look at it from a different methodology. Is that fair to say?
Not meaning to speak for my husband, but I have to call you out on that. Because what the city is actually saying is that we are in violation. That transferability as it stands violates the law. That's not what the State Lands Commission said. Appears to violate is what they said. But anyway,
That's okay.
that's almost 50 minutes.
All right, let's get you your 2 minutes.
Hi there.
Elizabeth, hold on, you get your 2 minutes, we'll give you 3 minutes.
I'm
All right, here we go, you're up.
I'm Shaylee Hilkema, a Newport Harbor mooring permit holder and a Newport Beach resident with a home a block away from the harbor. In my neighborhood, private docks are separated from upland homes by a public right-of-way. Neighbors who are boaters use docks, private docks, or moorings to store their boats when they're not in use. We are light users. Most of us paid private parties to obtain our permits, and we pay fees to the city for our private use of the public tidelands. However, we're not managed as equals. The city's treatment of us has been classist, as if we're second-class boaters, yet it gives those with residential docks the comfort of permit stability and financial favoritism. The irrefutable disparity in the city's rate and regulatory policies is discriminatory and warrants the State Lands Commission's censure. Our user group is being threatened with a 300 to 500% tidelands fee increase and an end to our mooring transferability. It appears that the city wants our moorings so it can charge much higher fees for its short-term mooring license product. It has already claimed 17 moorings, removed mooring tackle of some, installed helical anchors without a permitting review for a CDP. If the city's plan is resuscitated, it will be a costly operation for boaters of moderate means who are at risk of having their harbor access cut off. Over the years, city policymakers and staff have maligned mooring permit holders with false claims that they're selling the tidelands or making huge profits when they transfer their permits. The facts are that we do not sell the public tidelands, and most of us only recoup some of what we paid. The city makes money from subletting our moorings, which are maintained at our expense, and it gets millions of dollars in additional insurance protection because we are regulated to indemnify it. It's obvious that private docks and single-point yacht club moorings with transport services are far better and more convenient than I heard that beep, beep, beep. We don't, just a couple of seconds, we don't need to be continually gaslighted on this issue. We don't want to be the convenient scapegoat when the city explains to those with residential piers why their fees must be raised. Still, the issue isn't that residential pier rates are too low, it's that mooring fees are too high. So with all that's been said and legislated about the support of recreational boating and access to the public tidelands, we're hoping for fair harbor policy and fair winds. Thank you for the extra seconds.
It's a very good point, and I think that was mentioned in the State Lands Commission, and their encouragement to us is to conduct a comprehensive review of all the different harbor users within our harbor. And so that is why we are here today, is to start that comprehensive review. And I know today is just an informational meeting, but before we end this process, we're conducting appraisals on all the different user groups. So correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, but residential piers, yacht clubs, mooring permits, they're all being appraised. And as part of this comprehensive review, we're going to have a complete policy package that we will send to the State Lands Commission to study, to make sure it's compliant with state law before anything else is done. So I appreciate where you're coming from, that you want to make sure everybody gets analyzed. And I think that's a fair concern, and we're committed to providing a comprehensive review.
We'd like to see you send that to us before you send it to the State Lands Commission.
And, well, that's a great point. So that's,
So we should have a meeting before we send it to them so that we're open and transparent, get together. We agree this was what you should present to the State Lands Commission.
so that is what the public hearings will be doing. So each user group will have its, hold on. Each user group will have its time before the Harbor Commission, and the Harbor Commission will make recommendations, and we will be inviting public comment. Ms. Sandy Manick, you're up to bat.
Excuse me, my last name is Manich. It's not Manich. My name is Sandy Manich. Oh, thank you. So I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sandy Manich, and I've been a liveaboard in Newport Beach Harbor for way over 10 years. I'm a full-time teacher in Orange Unified School District. And what I wanted to just briefly bring up in my introduction to you guys tonight, is we have a lot going on. I just installed our art show at the district office before I came here this evening for my high school students. And in any case, the Newport Mooring Association has suggested that there's a state standard rate that to be charged for moorings and residential piers alike, which really makes a lot of sense to me. And that's what I'm here to advocate for, that we're all treated equally in every aspect, including transfers. So if a mooring cannot be transferred, then why can a pier be transferred? Why are they not looked at? That's my big question, but I don't want to discuss that because it's too deep right now while I'm standing here. But my other question regarding the slides, because it's been on my mind ever since I saw it in the website. When I acquired my mooring, it was in the city's website that you could acquire a mooring, and they generally go for about $1,000 a foot. It was in the city's website. So that's what I went by. And I discussed this with my father, who was the Lake County surveyor in Lake County, Indiana for 28 years before I got the permit to get this mooring. And he looked at that and he said, "You're good." So it's in the city's website. Now, the slide that Matt showed earlier that he said, pay attention to the slide when you're talking about fees, taxes, or what's the other one? Rent. If they had called me, or if that word rent, they changed the word rent from fee in 2024. It was not in there when I obtained my, it was called a fee or a tax. I would never have made the down payment that I did for that mooring if I would have been called rent at that time. And the city changed it in 2024. So to be open and transparent, I would love to see the old website against the new website, because that's what I made my decision for my retirement on. Thank you.
So real quick, if I can just turn it over, Sandy maybe had one question that I thought is worthwhile answering, and that is related to the benchmark. Would you gentlemen want to touch on that?
So the State Lands Commission does have benchmarks for a number of regions throughout the state. Usually they are relatively defined areas, so think of Lake Tahoe, think of the Delta, and we do have a Southern California benchmark. Now this is taken from a broader area, and what we do is we look at commercial rates across a large area, and essentially we kind of come up with an average. And then what this does for us is this helps us assign the value for rent for a pier that is not in a granted land situation. So not a situation like the city of Newport, but an area that is ungranted, that we have complete jurisdiction over, or we set the rental values. So this makes it easier and consistent. It also is easier for us from a staffing perspective, so we don't have to go out and survey every single location, which can be very time consuming. So we have that universal kind of for discrete areas. When there are areas where there is a clear sort of region or clear set of facts for that particular area, and you have appraisals for that particular area, a broader benchmark may not be the appropriate number then. Because we're looking at trying to come up with a value that is as specific to the location as possible. Okay?
But it's for all Californians, not
So,
for
but I should also point out though, that this is a granted versus ungranted land situation. The city sets the rates. They are the grantee in this situation. They are conducting appraisals to come up with what is the fair market value for that, for the moorings and the piers in its grant. And applying a broader region may not yield a value that is actually the market rate value for that area.
All right, thank you, sir. And again, we have the State Lands Commission staff are our guests. So if we can just help us out by letting them answer the questions and not shouting at them, it'll go better in terms of conversation. I know we're all fired up and want to hear answers and responses, but if you could just give them that courtesy to complete their sentence without interrupting, that'd be totally awesome. All right, sir, you are on the mic. Here we go.
Okay, I'm Keith Garrison. I live on Island Avenue, and I have a mooring A241, had the mooring for 30 years. So my question is a really simple question. When you raise the rates, you're managing the lands for the benefit of the people. So when you raise the rates, who does that benefit? I don't think any mooring holder feels like they'll be benefited, or any dock owner is going to feel like they're benefited. So there must be some reason you're raising the rates. Who are the beneficiary?
City.
Name one person or one group.
So, as has been mentioned, right, the granted land is going to be managed, to your point, in the interest of the statewide public. When the rates go up, and this could be anywhere, not just Newport Beach, it goes toward the Highlands Fund, which allows the city, as a grantee in this instance, to maintain and manage the granted lands more effectively, and that is in the statewide best interest. The legislature has acknowledged through the grant that having these harbor facilities is in the statewide best interest. So that's really what we're talking about.
Well, before the city took over, the county managed it, and we seemed to be managed very well up until 2017, until the city decided to take over. They just want the money. They wanted to build a marina.
Thank you, sir.
Money grab.
Hello, my name is Eric Chain. I own a mooring and a house in Newport Beach. I'm trying to find out why did you guys take such a pause of so many years to raise the rates? I mean, why all of a sudden such a huge, jumping from paying, $140 for the mooring to something like $700? Why did it have to take so much time instead of every year going up by a very small percentage? That's one of the questions. And the second question is, I bought my mooring for a lot of money. And the minute you guys raise it to that big number, that means the mooring is going to be basically worthless. So that's a land grab. I basically lost my money that I paid for it, because the second you raise it, it's going to be worthless. It's going to be worthless. If I want to sell it tomorrow to get my money back, people are going to laugh in my face. So it's worthless to me now, and it's a land grab. I lost all my money because it wasn't raised slowly throughout the years, and people kind of know what's coming at them instead of just getting punched in the